Do you ever feel like you were forced to grow up too soon? Or do you remember as a child looking around at the responsibilities that you had compared to your friends and thinking that you were expected to do a lot more than they were, to the point where something just felt wrong? Or maybe now as an adult, you find yourself taking on too much responsibility for everyone and everything around you, and you don't really know why. Well, it could be because you went through something as a child called parentification. And today I'm going to talk to you about what parentification is and how to know whether or not you were. And then we're going to look at some of the impacts that it has. And then I'm going to give you something to start on to start healing that, if that is something that you went through as a child. But first, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you are back again, it is always good to have you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. Get notified when new talks come out. And if you get something out of this video, if I could ask you to like it, that would be amazing. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my incredible membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work deeper and learning how to do the inner healing and growth work, and you're being supported and held accountable the whole way through in this incredible community. You can get more information about the Shift Society in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And having been parentified as a child is definitely something that has long-term effects that can be impacting you and holding you back now. And so I'm going to talk to you specifically about the different types of parentification so that you can develop that insight and understanding to see if this is something that you did go through, so that you can see now that because of the long-term impacts of that, it's not that you're struggling because there's something wrong with you, but it's because you went through things that were, for all intents and purposes, wrong. And then often when we have that insight and understanding, it creates something inside of us that is healing and that releases us to be able to move forward and do that healing and growth work to get past and heal from those impacts. So, what is parentification? Essentially, it is the role reversal of child and parent in some kind of significant, recurrent, or long-lasting ways. It's when the child is expected to take on the roles and the responsibilities that are typically for the parent to do. And this can cause disruptions in the brain development of a child because they haven't been given the space or the freedom to develop naturally as children. They've been given or forced to take on inappropriate roles and responsibilities that creates disruption in development. Essentially, parentification has two types of it. The first type is emotional parentification, and the second type is instrumental parentification. The first type, the emotional parentification, can come in some different forms, but the main forms are when the child becomes the coach or the counselor or the confidant to a parent. So if you had a parent that often came to you with their problems, with their money problems, with their marriage problems, with their friendship problems, with their mental health problems, with their work problems, and they came and almost like dumped it on you or vented to you about it, or expected you to give them advice or support or to help them through it. It's not just the parent was like, oh, I had such a bad day today, so-and-so, blah, 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 and they just kind of went off, but they're like, oh, well. They actually came to you and sat down and you felt this like heaviness, like, oh my gosh, my parent is struggling, my parent is going through something, and I have to do something about it. You felt this like heavy burden of their problems, and that wasn't by accident. It was likely because they were coming to you as their support person, as their confidant, as their counselor. And that is absolutely not the role or responsibility for a child. Another type of emotional parentification could be if a parent actually just came to you for advice. They sat down and they weren't just venting about a problem, they were actually telling you about a problem, and they're like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? This is so hard. I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know if I can get through this. And you again, like they were kind of feeling hopeless and stuck and anxious or scared, and you felt the significant weight of that, and you felt like it was your job to make them feel better. It was your job to make them okay, to make their life okay, and you carried that burden. The next type of parentification is instrumental parentification. So this is more practically speaking when you thought it was your job to take on the majority of the responsibilities in the home. Maybe you not just thought it was your job to take care of your parents, but you also thought it was your job to take care of your siblings, to make sure that they were safe, to feed them, to get them to activities, to take on the household duties, to do the cleaning, to pay the bills. And ultimately you thought it was your job to both fend for yourself and to take care of everyone else's basic needs, not just their emotional needs, but also their safety needs, their scheduling needs, the cleanliness needs, the feeding needs. And this is different than children who were expected to have chores. I am a firm believer in giving children age appropriate and quantity appropriate responsibilities. Giving them a sense of mastery, giving them a sense of autonomy, giving them things to learn so that they can develop skills, so that they can participate in keeping the family going, not bear the responsibility. There's a difference between a child helping out in the household as a member of a team, of a family, keeping things going, and a child that feels responsible. And if you were parentified, you probably felt like, I can't have fun, I can't go out, I can't leave because if I don't do this, or if I'm not on top of this, or I don't take care of this, everyone and everything is going to fall apart. And you felt this huge burden. It wasn't just a kid that was like, oh, I don't want to clean my room, or oh, I don't want to fold the laundry, or oh, I don't want to tidy up the toys, right? It wasn't that. It was like this feeling of deep anxiety or fear or like responsibility that if I don't do this, things are going to fall apart. Things are not going to be okay. And so that's the instrumental type of parentification. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to look at signs of parentification then, or kind of how it played out then, and then how it's having an impact on you now. So if you're like, yeah, I did feel this huge sense of responsibility for my family, for my parents, for the house, for, things that a child shouldn't have felt this huge amount of responsibility for, I definitely remember that. And I remember feeling kind of weird about it, but I didn't really know why. And perhaps now some light bulbs are going on and you're like, oh, it's all kind of making sense and it's all coming together. That wasn't supposed to be my rule. That wasn't okay. It didn't feel right, but I didn't really know that it wasn't right because I didn't know anything any different. And so now things are starting to feel more clear. So now that you're like, yep, pretty good sign that happened, let's look at how that played out and how that impacted you as a child, and then how it's impacting you now. So as a child, if you were parentified, you probably didn't feel very free to just let loose and play or be a kid, because like I was saying, you felt so responsible for others. You didn't feel like you could just go off and have fun. You didn't feel like you could just run off with your friends or go play stay after school longer and play after school. You didn't feel like you could just go in your room and kind of be creative and do your own thing other than as a coping method to cope with all the stress and overburdening. You didn't feel just like this freedom to do that. And how that is impacting you now is likely in the same or a similar way. So maybe now as an adult, you really don't feel safe letting loose, having fun, doing things for yourself, just like putting off all responsibilities and knowing that you can take a break. You probably don't really feel like you can take a break. Like you think that if you do, everything is going to fall apart or something terrible is going to happen. Or you just have so much anxiety that you can't even put your finger on it. And you're like, I just can't. I just feel so uncomfortable and so difficult to do. And you can't really figure out why. It very likely could have been because of this over responsibility that you had to take on as a child. Another way that this could have impacted you as a child and then how it impacts you now is you felt anxious as a child if you didn't keep everything together for everyone all the time. You kind of had this feeling that if anything goes wrong, it's going to be awful. And so you tried to control things. You tried to like pad things. You maybe tried to like keep the peace in your family. So your parents wouldn't argue because you felt responsible for getting involved in their conflicts and fixing things. So maybe you were trying to prevent anything from ever going wrong. You felt this huge burden of responsibility to control, to prevent, to keep everything in order. And then now as an adult, the same thing. There's this huge need to try to control things, to keep everyone and everything in order. Maybe you have this really big fear of anyone or anything falling apart because you think that it's going to be your responsibility to fix it. And that just feels so overwhelming that you're trying to prevent anything bad from happening because of how you are going to take that on and how much stress that is going to put you under to try to make it better or fix it. So that over-functioning, that over-responsibility. The next way it could have impacted you as a child and how it impacts you now is if as a child you were only ever praised for being the good girl or the good boy or the responsible one. Look at Susie. She's so responsible. She takes on all these things and, you know, she never asks for anything and she's always taking care of everyone. She's always looking out for everyone. And, you know, albeit, yeah, it's great. As a parent, it's great when your kids clean their room without asking, or when they are making themselves a snack, they make one for their younger sibling. Like little things like that, that's normal. But when it was the only way that you got praise or recognition, you felt that that was your only valued role in the family. That was the only way you got attention, is if you were taking on the responsibility for others or for other things or for your siblings or for your parents or for the house. You felt like that was the only way you got recognized, and so then kept doing it more and more and more, which would give you more and more praise, which was more and more validating, which is what you craved because you weren't really getting it anywhere else. So now as an adult, same thing. You feel like your only value comes from what you can do for others. You feel like you are only appreciated or worthwhile when you are over-functioning or over-giving or taking on responsibility too much for other people in any of your relationships, or even at work. If you're the one who always gets things done, who always goes the extra mile, who always takes on extra, who always bears the brunt, and you're like, that's the only way I'm going to get recognized is if I do way more than everyone else, then that could have been because there was this sense of over-responsibility that, again, as a child, the only way I got any attention was if I took on way more than anyone else. And that can also lead now as an adult to people-pleasing, right? So when we think that we have to do everything for everyone, or never say no, or never have boundaries, or never take care of ourselves, because if we do, then people won't like us, or they might change their opinion of us, or they might think less of us, and we can't bear to have that because our only value comes from what we can do for others or how we can please them. The next sign of parentification, the impact of parentification and how it could be impacting you now, is you didn't trust your parents to be there for you, so you learned to rely on yourself. And probably for good reason, because they weren't there for you. And that's why you felt this need to take on all that responsibility, because your parents weren't there to feed you. Your parents weren't there to take care of your siblings. Your parents weren't there to pay the bills. Your parents weren't able to take care of themselves. And so you felt like you had to take care of them, but not only that, you had to take care of yourself because there was no one else to take care of you, and you didn't trust that people would show up to take care of you and to meet your needs and to be there for what was important for your thriving, even your surviving. And so as an adult now, how that could impact you is you have a hard time trusting other people. You really have a hard time trusting that people are going to be there for you. And it might even go so far as you don't even bother asking people for help because you're like, they're not going to help me. Nobody has ever been there to help me, to be there for me. Why would anyone do that now? Or you just trust that people are going to, or you believe, not trust, you just think, or maybe trust that people are going to let you down. The only trust you have is that people are going to disappoint you or let you down. And so you go through life with this viewpoint that other people aren't there for me, other people won't be there for me, I don't have anyone, I can't reach out for help, there's no one available to support me, and it can feel very lonely. It can feel very isolated and isolating. And if that's something you struggle with, it is likely, or it could very well be, because no one was there for you when you were a child. You're the one who had to be there. They weren't. The next sign, you felt, and we kind of covered this a little bit, but just looking at it a bit of a different way, when we look at that functional type of parentification, or that, I guess that instrumental type of parentification that we talked about, you felt this huge burden of responsibility towards the home, towards keeping everyone together, towards keeping everyone safe, towards keeping everything going. And under everything under that umbrella, you felt responsible for other people's needs, for making sure everything was okay, to solving everyone's problems. And then now, as an adult, you are a huge overfunctioner and often feel stressed and overwhelmed with making sure everything and everyone stays together. You feel overwhelmed often if someone comes to you with a problem, or even if someone is just talking about a problem that they're dealing with in their life, not even coming to you with it, but just talking about something, you get this kind of pit in your stomach, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to fix this. I'm going to have to do something about this. I have to make this better. And so maybe even as an adult now, you tend to isolate yourself. You tend to isolate yourself because you're like, I don't want the burden of responsibility that comes with being around other people. I don't want to feel like it's up to me to take care of it, to do it, to plan it, to oversee it, to fix it, to solve it. Because you have this sense that it is up to you, because at one point in your childhood, it likely was. And so you didn't learn that kind of separation of self because you didn't have the option for that. It wasn't available to you, or at least you didn't know how to make it available to you in childhood. And then now as an adult, you've continued to take that on, even though you haven't, even though it's not actually your responsibility, all this stuff. Some things are, but probably not nearly as much as you think there are. But you feel this tremendous amount of responsibility, far more than is yours. So either you tend to get stressed out and overburdened with this overfunctioning, or you recluse, you isolate, you avoid, or maybe you go kind of between the two. What do we do about it? First of all, we need to learn how to develop a healthy sense of self. You need to develop a strong, secure relationship with yourself where you are listening to yourself. You are caring for yourself. Essentially, you are reparenting yourself by offering yourself care and compassion and respect and building a sense of self-trust within yourself. No, you couldn't trust them to be there for you, to show up for you in the ways that you needed, maybe not in all the ways, but in some of the ways that you needed. And so there is a disconnect there. So working on building that solid, secure relationship with yourself by reparenting yourself through building self-trust is going to be huge for that. And I have a guide. It's called The Simple Steps to Self-Trust. This is really going to help you and walk you through that step by step. That is available to you in the description below. You can also come and join us, do this deeper work within the Shift Society. The information for that is there as well. And you can grab that Simple Steps to Self-Trust while you're waiting for the Shift Society to open. We open registration a couple times a year, but you can get on the wait list for that. And then also really to start you off right now is to really work on building that more secure relationship with yourself, because that security wasn't available to you in all the ways that it needed to be as a child, to really just be working on compassion for yourself. Really working on even just starting with saying, oh, okay, some of the things that I'm struggling with now are not because there's something wrong with me. It's because I went through things that were wrong. Parentification of a child is not okay. And for whatever the reason, it happened. But even if it was for a quote unquote good reason, it still wasn't okay. And so working on healing yourself through those words of understanding and compassion by not shaming yourself and thinking there's something wrong with you. Developing that understanding, building that self-trust, being good to yourself. Sounds easy, isn't always, but that's the work. Let me know what connected with you. Always good to be here with you. And until next time, take good care of yourselves. Take good care of those around you. Bye for now.